Hashtag part 1. The ghost who forgot to die. The letter. 3 pages. 72 hours of writing. One photograph folded so many times the crease ran directly through his daughter's face, splitting her smile in half. Marcus Rivera sat beneath the Tanque Verde Road overpass in Tucson, Arizona, his back pressed against concrete that still radiated the day's heat even at 11:47 at night. July in the desert didn't cool down after sunset. It just stopped actively trying to kill you for a few hours. The difference was subtle but real, like the difference between drowning and treading water. Both would finish you eventually. One just took longer. He held the photograph in one hand. The other held a letter addressed to no one because no one remained who would care. "Dear whoever finds me," it began. Marcus had written and rewritten those opening words maybe 50 times before they felt right, before they said exactly what he needed them to say. The letter explained everything. The guilt that had eaten him hollow from the inside out. The spiral that had stripped away everything he'd ever been, piece by piece, year by year, until nothing remained except the walking shell of a man who'd forgotten how to be human. The 3 years of slow erasure from existence until he became exactly what his road name suggested. Ghost, something that moved through the world without touching it. Something other people's eyes slid past without registering. Something that left no mark, no trace, no evidence it had ever been alive at all. The photograph was old now, 5 years. The edges had worn soft from handling. The colors had started to fade, but he could still see her face. Maya, 7 years old in this picture. Gap-toothed smile, blonde hair pulled back in pigtails. Wearing her favorite dress, the purple one with yellow flowers that Sarah had bought her for her birthday. His daughter, his little girl, dead 5 years now. Dead because Marcus hadn't been there. Dead because he'd been on club business 200 miles away when the drunk driver crossed the center line and turned his entire world into a smoking crater. The letter explained that too. How Sarah had died on impact. How Maya had lived for 6 more hours in the hospital, asking for daddy, asking when he was coming, asking why it hurt so much. How Marcus had arrived 20 minutes after she stopped breathing. How he'd held her small hand and it had already started to go cold. The club had tried to help afterward. Jake and the others, the Iron Horsemen, his brothers. They'd given him time, given him space, given him every chance to pull himself together and come back to the life. But Marcus couldn't find his way back. The grief was too heavy, the guilt too sharp. Every time he put on his vest, it felt like wearing a costume, like playing pretend at being someone he used to be. So he drank. And when the drinking didn't work, he drank more. And when that stopped working, he stopped showing up, stopped answering his phone, stopped pretending he cared about club business or brotherhood or any of the things that used to matter before the universe taught him that nothing mattered at all. 3 years ago, Jake had called a meeting, 40 brothers in the clubhouse. Marcus standing in the center while Jake cut his patch off with a knife. The sound of tearing leather was the loudest thing Marcus had ever heard. Louder than the motorcycle engines. Louder than his own heartbeat. "You're not our brother anymore," Jake had said. "Don't call this number again." And Marcus hadn't. He'd walked out of that clubhouse and kept walking until he ran out of road. Then he'd slept under a bridge and discovered that nobody cared. Nobody came looking. Nobody noticed when ghost finally became a ghost for real. His parents were both gone now too. Dad from lung cancer 2 years ago. Mom from heartbreak 6 months after that. Rachel's family blamed him for putting their daughter and granddaughter in danger with his motorcycle club lifestyle. They told him at the funeral not to contact them again. So he hadn't. Tonight, he would make the erasure permanent. The bridge above him had a pedestrian walkway. 4 a.m. when the city slept deepest. 40 feet to the concrete below. The physics was simple. Gravity plus velocity plus sudden stop equals ending. No more pain, no more guilt, no more waking up every morning and remembering that everyone he'd ever loved was gone, and it was somehow his fault for not being there when it mattered. But first, hunger. His stomach had been screaming for 6 hours. The animal part of him, the part that didn't care about philosophy or grief or endings, still wanted calories, still demanded fuel. Even a man ready to die couldn't ignore that primal signal forever. One last meal, or whatever passed for a meal when you lived in dumpsters. Marcus tucked the photograph back into his chest pocket, the same pocket that used to hold his Iron Horseman patch before Jake cut it off. The letter went into his back pocket. He'd leave it somewhere visible before he climbed. Let whoever found his body understand that this was a choice, not an accident. Miguel's Cantina sat 3 blocks east. Marcus knew their garbage schedule like he knew his own heartbeat. Tuesday and Friday pickups, which meant Wednesday nights offered the freshest discards. Day-old tortillas, rice that had sat too long under heat lamps. Sometimes, if luck smiled, beans from plates customers had barely touched. He moved through the darkness with the particular walk of the urban invisible. Not sneaking, which drew attention. Not hurrying, which suggested purpose. Just existing in the spaces between streetlights where nobody wanted to look. Where the homeless and the forgotten lived their parallel lives alongside the normal world without ever really touching it. 3 years on the streets had taught him this. How to be nothing, how to move like smoke, how to make eye contact with no one and have no one make eye contact back. The alley behind Miguel's smelled like it always did, grease and cilantro and the sweet rot of food waste fermenting in Arizona heat. 2 dumpsters sat against the brick wall, one for trash, one for food waste. Marcus could tell them apart by smell alone, even in darkness. He approached the food dumpster, hands finding the edge, preparing to lift the lid. And then he heard it. A breath, small, quick. The breath of someone trying very hard not to breathe at all. Marcus froze. The boy, slowly, carefully, he lifted the dumpster lid. Darkness inside, deeper than the night around him. The smell of discarded food, sour and sweet at the same time. And beneath that, something else, something alive. His eyes adjusted. Garbage bags, crushed boxes, food waste in varying states of decomposition. And in the corner, pressed against the metal wall like he was trying to phase through it into another dimension, a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 8. Blonde hair matted with grease and what might have been tears or might have been sweat or might have been both. Clothes that might have been a school uniform once, plaid shirt, khaki pants, now stained and torn and reeking of garbage. His eyes caught the ambient light from the street and reflected it back like an animal's. Those eyes were not the eyes of a child. They were the eyes of prey that had been hunted too long. Eyes that had seen things no 8-year-old should see. Eyes that calculated angles and exits and chances of survival with every blink. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The man and the boy. The ghost and the hunted. 2 refugees from different wars meeting in the bottom of a dumpster at midnight in Tucson. "Hey," Marcus said quietly, "I'm not going to hurt you." The boy flinched like he'd screamed. "Hey, I'm Marcus. I live around here, under the bridge." His voice was rough from disuse. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I was just looking for something to eat. Same as you, maybe." Nothing. Just those eyes. Calculating, weighing, measuring threat levels with the cold precision of someone who'd had to learn survival math the hard way. "Whatever you're hiding from," Marcus continued, "I'm not part of it." The boy's lips moved. No sound came out at first, then a whisper so faint Marcus almost missed it. "He said he'd bury me next to Uncle Ben." The words hung in the air like a curse. Marcus felt his blood go cold. Not the gradual chill of stepping into shade. The instant freeze of jumping into Arctic water. Every hair on his arm stood up. The boy wasn't finished. "If he finds me," the boy's voice cracked, breaking on the words, "it's my turn next." He said he promised. He always keeps his promises. Marcus's hands tightened on the edge of the dumpster. "Who? Who said that?" "Wade." The name came out like a snake's hiss. "Wade. Wade who?" The boy shook his head violently, pressing harder against the metal wall. "I can't. He'll know. He's got people everywhere. Police? Everyone. Police." The word triggered something in Marcus's memory, a fragment from 5 years ago. The trial he'd attended in a haze of grief and rage. The driver who killed Sarah and Maya, 19-year-old kid, drunk off his ass at 2 in the afternoon, crossing the center line going 70 in a 35. Brendan Sullivan, son of Deputy Sheriff Roy Sullivan of Puma County. Marcus had sat through 3 days of testimony, watched the defense attorney spin stories about young men making mistakes, watched Brendan's father sit in the front row in his uniform, stone-faced, while his son got 18 months of community service for killing 2 people. 18 months, for 2 lives. The Sullivans had money, had connections, had the kind of power that turned justice into a negotiable commodity. "Listen to me," Marcus said, his voice suddenly urgent. He reached slowly into his pocket. The boy flinched again, but Marcus moved with exaggerated care, pulling out the photograph. "You see this?" He turned it so the boy could see Maya's face, the gap-toothed smile, the purple dress, the pure joy of being 7 years old and thinking the world was good. "This was my daughter, Molly. She was 7. He swallowed hard. "She died because of a man named Sullivan. Different Sullivan maybe, but the same family." The boy's eyes moved from the photograph to Marcus's face. Something shifted in those calculating eyes, some equation rebalancing, some threat assessment being revised. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. A long pause. The kind of pause that comes when you're deciding whether the truth is more dangerous than a lie. Then barely above a whisper, Ethan Carter. Okay, Ethan Carter. Marcus took a breath. The air smelled like rot and fear and something else. Something that might have been the last shreds of hope. I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet. I don't have money or a phone that works or anything really, but I'm going to help you. The boy looked at him with those two old eyes. Why? The question hit harder than Marcus expected. Why was he offering to help? 3 hours ago, he'd been writing a suicide note. 3 hours from now, he was supposed to be dead. Why interrupt that plan for a stranger's child? Because I couldn't save Maya. The words came out raw. I wasn't there. And I've been dying slowly ever since. He met Ethan's eyes. But you're here and I'm here, and maybe that means something. Ethan's hand moved, reached into his own pocket, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and held it out. Marcus took it, smoothed it open under the dim light. 4 words in a woman's handwriting, written with the desperate speed of someone running out of time. Run and don't stop. Below that, a phone number, 520 area code. What's this number? Marcus asked. FBI. Ethan's voice was barely audible. Mama found Uncle Ben's diary. She found everything. She sent it to them already, but Wade found out. He took her. He locked her somewhere. Tears started streaming down the boy's face, cutting clean tracks through the grime. She told me run and don't stop. Marcus's jaw tightened. His hand reached into his back pocket. His fingers found the letter. 3 pages of goodbye. 72 hours of writing. Every word carefully chosen to explain why a broken man had chosen to stop fighting. He looked at the letter, then at the boy, then at the photograph still in his other hand. And for the first time in 3 years, something stirred in the hollow place where his heart used to be. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too strong a word for what he felt. But maybe the memory of hope, the ghost of the person he used to be before grief killed him. He pulled the letter out of his pocket, looked at it one more time, then tore it in half, tore the halves into quarters, tore the quarters into eighths, let the pieces fall like snow onto the garbage around them. What was that? Ethan asked. Nothing important. Marcus extended his hand. Not anymore. Come on, I know a place. Ethan looked at the hand, dirty, calloused, trembling slightly from malnutrition and withdrawal and 3 years of systematic self-destruction. Then he took it. That bracelet on Ethan's wrist, a simple silver chain with a compass charm, caught the light as he climbed out of the dumpster. Remember it. By the end of this story, it will hang around someone else's neck entirely, and you will understand why. The sanctuary. Marcus led him through darkness, staying close to walls and shadows, moving through the parts of the city where cameras didn't point and streetlights stayed broken. Tell me about your family, he said quietly, about how you ended up in that dumpster. Ethan walked beside him, his small hand gripping Marcus's with surprising strength. Mama married Wade 2 years ago. I didn't want her to, but she said we needed help. After Dad left, we didn't have money. What does Wade do? I don't know. Ethan's voice was flat, reciting facts he'd observed but didn't understand. He goes out at night, talks on the phone in rooms with the door closed, yells at Mama when she asks questions. Classic control patterns. Marcus had seen it before in the club. Men who needed to dominate, who saw women and children as property to manage. What about your Uncle Ben? Ethan's grip tightened. He was Mama's brother. He lived with us when I was little. Then he started dating one of Wade's friends. Then he went away. His voice dropped even lower. Mama said he moved to California, but he never called, never wrote. And then she found his diary. Where? In the garage. In a box Wade said not to touch. Ethan shuddered at the memory. She made a sound I never heard before. Like all the air got punched out of her. Then she called the FBI and told them everything. How long ago? 2 days. Then Wade came home early, saw her on the phone, heard who she was talking to. Ethan stopped walking. He hit her really hard. I heard it from upstairs. And he said he knew where Uncle Ben really was and Mama was going to the same place. Sound in the distance. Engine growing closer. Marcus pulled Ethan into a doorway, pressing them both flat against the wall. His heart hammered. Adrenaline flooding his system for the first time in years. The familiar rush of danger, of stakes that mattered, of having something to protect. Headlights swept the street. A truck moving slowly, methodically. Flashlight beams probing alleys and doorways like surgical instruments searching for infection. They were searching. The truck passed their doorway by maybe 15 feet, close enough that Marcus could see the driver's face, could see the deliberate patience of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to go. He counted to 60 before moving. Come on, faster now. His camp wasn't much. A sleeping bag wedged into a concrete alcove where support beams met foundation, invisible from the road unless you knew exactly where to look. In here, he said, guiding Ethan. Watch your head. The boy ducked under a low beam and emerged into a space the size of a large closet. Concrete on three sides. Open to the elements on the fourth, but sheltered from view by the angle of the overpass structure above. It's hidden, Marcus said. No one's found me here in 3 years. Ethan looked around at what passed for home to a ghost. A sleeping bag, a backpack with maybe 3 shirts, a plastic bag with toiletries stolen from gas station bathrooms, the accumulated possessions of a man who'd spent 3 years practicing to be dead. Then Ethan sat on the sleeping bag, pulled his knees to his chest, and started to shake. Not crying, just shaking. Full body tremors like an earthquake was happening inside him. Delayed shock, the adrenaline finally wearing off. The reality of the last 48 hours catching up all at once. Marcus sat beside him, maintaining distance, but close enough that the boy could feel his presence. It's okay. Let it out. Ethan didn't cry, just shook, his breath coming in short gasps that might have been the start of hyperventilation if Marcus hadn't seen it before. Had felt it himself after Sarah and Maya died, the body trying to process trauma too big to fit inside a human nervous system. After 15 minutes, the shaking subsided. Ethan's breathing normalized. The tremors faded to occasional shudders. I'm sorry, the boy whispered. Nothing to be sorry for. Mama said I had to be brave. You were brave. Marcus kept his voice low and steady. Running from those people in the dark. Hiding. Surviving. That takes guts most adults don't have. Ethan looked at him. Do you think Mama's okay? Marcus considered lying. Considered offering false comfort the way adults always did to children, as if pretending things were fine would somehow make them fine. But Ethan's eyes were too old for that. Had seen too much. Deserved the truth, or at least as much truth as Marcus could give. I don't know, but your mama sounds smart. Sending that diary to the FBI. Giving you that number. Making sure you got out. She was planning. People who plan like that usually survive. Wade's really angry. I've never seen him that angry. Angry people make mistakes. Marcus watched the entrance to the alcove, listening. That's how you beat them. You stay calm and let them be stupid. Sound again. Engines. Multiple this time. Closer than before. He pressed himself against the concrete pillar and watched through the gap. 3 trucks moving in formation, sweeping the area with military precision. Flashlights turning night into a patchwork of light and shadow. They were getting systematic. Ethan, he whispered, stay here. Stay quiet no matter what you hear. Where are you going? I need to misdirect them. Marcus slipped out before the boy could protest. Dropped to the street below, his body protesting every movement. Joints stiff from 3 years of sleeping on concrete. Muscles weak from malnutrition and systematic neglect. He ignored it all, moved parallel to the searching trucks until he found another homeless camp half a mile away. 3 men sleeping rough under blankets. Marcus didn't know them, didn't want to, but he needed them. He dropped his jacket on the ground like someone had abandoned it while fleeing, then retreated into shadows. From a distance, he watched the trucks find the jacket. Watched flashlights sweep the area. Watched one of the sleeping men get kicked awake and questioned, confused and angry and completely ignorant of what was happening. The truck spent 20 minutes searching that area while Marcus circled back to his own camp. Ethan was exactly where he'd left him, pressed into the corner, eyes wide but silent. They're going the wrong way, Marcus said. For now. But time was running out. He could feel it. The net closing, the hunters adapting. Eventually they'd search everywhere, and hidden alcoves under bridges would be obvious targets. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the phone he hadn't turned on in 3 years. A burner bought with care during his darkest days, kept charged through sheer habit even though he had no one to call. I might have one option, he said slowly, but it's complicated. What kind of complicated? The kind where I have to call someone who told me I was dead to him 3 years ago. Ethan watched him with those 2 old eyes. Mama says sometimes you have to ask for help even when it's hard. She says pride gets people killed. Marcus stared at the phone, at the black screen that represented a burned bridge, a severed connection, a relationship destroyed by his own grief and failure. Jake Thompson, president of the Iron Horseman Arizona chapter. The man who'd helped Marcus after Sarah and Maya died. The man who'd given him time and space and every chance to heal. The man who'd eventually cut him loose with words that still echoed, "You're not our brother anymore. Don't call this number again." That was 3 years ago. Now Marcus was about to break that silence. He pressed the power button. The screen flickered. The battery icon appeared. 4%, one chance, one number. One hope that maybe Jake hadn't deleted his contact. That maybe somewhere under the anger and disappointment, his old brother might still care enough to answer. But the battery was too low to risk it yet. He decided to wait. Save the power. See if dawn would bring clarity or options or anything except the inevitable. At 4:30 a.m., headlights appeared. A police cruiser, just driving. Normal patrol pattern. Nothing suspicious. Then it stopped. The cruiser sat at the intersection for a long moment, engine idling, as if the driver was thinking, making a decision. Then it turned toward the bridge, toward Marcus's camp. His stomach dropped. Someone had talked. Someone had seen something. Or maybe they were just checking every homeless spot in the area. Either way, this was bad. The cruiser parked. A single officer stepped out. Even in darkness, Marcus recognized the walk. The confident swagger of someone who owned every space they entered. Someone who'd never been told no in a way that mattered. "Hey," the officer called up toward the bridge. "Anyone up there? Tucson PD. Come down and we can talk." Marcus didn't move. "I know someone's up there. Got a report of a homeless male camping in this area." Still nothing. "Look, I don't want trouble. Just need to ask some questions." The officer started climbing. Marcus positioned himself to block the alcove entrance, his body between the approaching threat and the boy hiding in darkness behind him. The flashlight beam found him. "Well, well." The officer's voice changed completely, lost its friendly veneer like a snake shedding skin. "There you are." He climbed into view. Recognition hit like a physical blow. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Same jaw, same eyes, same entitled sneer that said the rules applied to other people but never to Sullivan's. This wasn't random patrol. This was Neil Sullivan, Wade's cousin, the cop Ethan had mentioned, the man who'd helped bury complaints and cover tracks and make problems disappear for 20 years. And recognition flickered in Neil's eyes too. "Holy shit," he said slowly, something like delight spreading across his face. "I know you. You're that bum. The one married to the woman Brendan." He stopped, laughed. The sound was ugly. "This is perfect." The call. Marcus's hands curled into fists. "Where's the boy?" Neil dropped all pretense of civility. "We know he was in this area. We know someone helped him." His hand moved toward his radio. "I'm going to call for backup. Tell them I found a vagrant trespassing. They'll come. They'll search. They'll find whatever you're hiding. You know what your family did to mine?" Marcus's voice came out quiet, deadly quiet. "You know Brendan killed my wife and daughter? Accidents happen." Neil shrugged like they were discussing weather. "Brendan paid his debt. 18 months community service for 2 lives. The court decided what your family bought." Neil's smile flickered. "Careful, you're talking to a police officer. I'm a homeless man under a bridge. What else can you do to me?" Silence. Then Neil keyed his radio. "This is Unit 724. Need backup at Ena Road overpass. One individual refusing to cooperate. Send units and inform Detective Sullivan we may have found what he's looking for." He released the key. "Backup's 40 minutes out. My cousin's probably closer. We can wait." 40 minutes. Marcus's hand closed around the phone in his pocket. 4% battery. One chance. One call. One hope. "I need to use the bathroom," he said. Neil snorted. "You live outside." "I mean, actually, there's a gas station 2 blocks away." Calculated gamble. Playing on Neil's arrogance. Betting that the cop's sense of superiority would make him underestimate a broken homeless man. Neil considered. "You think I'm stupid?" "Run where? I'm 50 years old, malnourished, wearing shoes with holes in them. You're half my age with a car." The calculation played out on Neil's face. The equation was simple. Old homeless guy versus young cop with radio and vehicle. No contest. "Fine, 10 minutes. I'll be watching." Marcus walked past him, keeping his movements slow and defeated. As soon as he was out of sight around the corner, he pulled out the phone. 3% now. He found the contact. Jake Thompson. The name he hadn't looked at in 3 years. The number he'd been told never to call again. Deep breath. Pressed call. 1 ring. "Please." 2 rings. "Please answer." 3 rings. His heart hammering so hard he could hear it. Click. A voice, rough with sleep and something that might have been anger. "Who is this?" "It's Ghost." Silence. Long silence. The kind that said 1,000 things without words. Disappointment. Betrayal. The memory of cutting a patch off a brother who'd given up on life. "Damn it, Marcus, I told you." "I know what you told me." The words came rushing out. "But I need you to listen for 30 seconds. Please, Jake." More silence. The phone beeped. Battery indicator dropped to 2%. "Talk." "There's a kid, little boy, 8 years old, hiding under the Ena Road overpass in Tucson. His stepfather's trying to kill him. His mother's locked up somewhere." Marcus's voice cracked. "And Jake, the stepfather, is Wade Sullivan, brother of Brendan Sullivan, the same family." A sharp intake of breath on the other end. The sound of Jake sitting up, fully awake now. "Her mother found evidence." Marcus kept talking, racing against the dying battery. Decades of abuse. Women disappearing. 51 complaints buried. She sent it to FBI, but they haven't moved yet. 1%. There's a cop here. Neil Sullivan. He's called backup. I've got 30 minutes. His voice broke completely. I couldn't save Maya, but I'm here now. This boy's right here. Please, Jake. Send anyone. Send everyone. The phone beeped again. Battery critical. Tucson. Ina Road overpass. Restaurant called Miguel's Cantina. 20 minutes, please. The phone died. Screen went black. Marcus stared at it, his hands shaking. He didn't know if Jake had heard the address. Didn't know if help was coming. Didn't know anything except that he'd just used his last card and it might not have been enough. He walked back to the overpass. Neil was waiting, leaning against the concrete support like he owned it. Took you long enough. Marcus climbed back to his spot near the alcove, positioned himself between the cop and the boy. Waited. Neil made conversation, talked about his family, his Uncle Roy's career spanning 2 decades, the importance of loyalty, how outsiders never understood what it took to protect your own, how family came first, always, no matter what. Marcus didn't respond, just watched the eastern horizon where the sun would eventually rise, where dawn would come whether he was alive to see it or not. Inside the alcove, Ethan's whisper was barely audible. Did he answer? I don't know. What do we do? We stand. Marcus kept his eyes on the horizon until we can't stand anymore. At 5:15 a.m., headlights appeared. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. Finally, Neil said, the cavalry. But something was wrong. The vehicles weren't moving like police. They were moving chaotically, aggressively, like a hunting pack that had found the scent. A truck screeched to a halt below. Then another. Then 3 more. Men piled out. Marcus recognized Wade Sullivan immediately. Tall, brown hair, scar on his chin. Moving with the coiled violence of a man who'd spent his life hurting people and getting away with it. Where is he? Wade called up to Neil. Working on it. The bum's not cooperating. Wade started climbing, reached the top, stopped in front of Marcus. You're the ghost. His eyes were cold, dead. The eyes of someone who'd stopped seeing other people as human a long time ago. The one whose family Brendan ran into. Pause. That's one way to put it. Here's another. You're nothing. A piece of trash that should have been thrown away years ago. He stepped closer. So why are you making problems for me? Marcus met his eyes. Because your stepson asked for help, and I said yes. Wade's eyes narrowed. Where is he? I don't know. Wade moved fast, fist connected with Marcus's stomach. All the air exploded out of his lungs. Another blow to the face. The world spun. He hit concrete hard, tasted blood. From inside the alcove, Ethan watched through a crack in the concrete, saw everything, made no sound. Where is he? Wade asked again. Marcus looked up at him, blood running from his lip, and said 2 words that would echo through the next 12 hours. I stand. Wade stared at him, then his foot drew back. Then Marcus's ribs cracked like dry branches breaking. Pain exploded through his chest, white hot and all-consuming. He curled into himself, tried to protect what was already broken. Tell me where he is, Wade said. And this ends quick. Keep playing hero and we start breaking things that don't heal. Marcus thought about Maya, her laugh, the way she'd run to him when he came home from club business, arms wide, screaming daddy at the top of her lungs. He thought about Ethan, those 2 old eyes, the bracelet on his wrist, the mother who'd given it to him. He thought about the promise he'd made. Your brother killed my daughter. Marcus's voice was steady despite the pain. She was 7, blonde hair, gap-toothed smile. She liked horses and ice cream. He gathered what little strength remained. I wasn't there to protect her. I've spent 3 years wishing I had been. Now I've got another little kid to protect. And this time I'm here. He smiled, blood stained his teeth. Do whatever you want. I'm standing until I can't stand anymore. Wade stared at him for a long moment, then turned to his men. Search the area, every corner. He's here somewhere. They spread out, flashlights sweeping, getting closer to the alcove entrance with every pass. Marcus watched helplessly. In moments, they would find Ethan, and then this would all be over. And then, a sound, distant at first, like thunder rolling across the desert, like an earthquake building from deep underground. A rumble that built and built until it filled the entire world. Wade froze. What the hell is that? Marcus knew that sound, had lived with it for 15 years. The unmistakable thunder of hundreds of motorcycle engines roaring in unison. A river of headlights appeared on the horizon, chrome gleaming in the pre-dawn darkness. An endless stream of motorcycles pouring down Ina Road like a mechanical tidal wave. And at the front, riding a black Harley Davidson with flames painted on the tank, a giant of a man with a gray beard. Jake Thompson. He'd heard the address after all. 247 motorcycles from 4 states, 1 hour to assemble, and a news helicopter overhead, turning this forgotten alley into the most watched moment of the year. But this wasn't the end. The real story was just beginning. Hashtag part 2, until I can't stand anymore. The rumble. The first motorcycles reached the overpass and stopped. Then more, and more, until the road below was completely blocked in both directions. A wall of metal and leather and righteous fury stretching as far as Marcus could see through his swelling eyes. Wade Sullivan stood frozen, his fists still clenched from the last blow he'd delivered. His men stopped their search, flashlights going still like they'd been turned to stone. Even Neil, the cop who'd started this whole thing, took an involuntary step backward. The sound was overwhelming. 247 V twin engines idling in unison created a bass note that vibrated through concrete and bone. The kind of sound you felt in your chest cavity before your ears processed it. The kind of sound that said consequences were arriving whether you were ready or not. Jake Thompson climbed off his Harley and looked up. "Marcus," his voice carried like a foghorn across the chaos. "You up there?" Marcus tried to shout back. Managed only a wet croak that nobody heard. Blood filled his mouth. His ribs screamed with every breath. The world kept trying to tilt sideways. But Ethan heard. The boy emerged from the alcove. Small, filthy, terrified, but alive. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted down with everything he had. "He's here. He's hurt bad. Come up." Jake was already climbing. He reached the top in seconds, moving with surprising speed for a man his size. His eyes swept the scene. Marcus's broken body bleeding on concrete. Ethan's tear-streaked face. Wade and his men frozen in shock. Neil Sullivan with his hand on his weapon, but not daring to draw it. "Jesus Christ," Jake breathed when he saw Marcus. "What the hell did they do to you?" Marcus tried to speak. His voice came out as a whisper. "You came. You think I'd miss this?" Jake knelt beside him, hands already checking injuries with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen too many bar fights and road accidents. 3 cracked ribs, maybe 4. Dislocated shoulder, face looks like raw meat. "How long you been like this?" "Couple hours." "They were looking for," Jake gestured at Ethan. "Not his kid." Marcus forced the words out. "Stepson. Wade was going to kill him. Kill his mother, too. They've been doing this for years, Jake. Decades. Women disappearing. Complaints buried. Whole family." Jake's expression went cold. The kind of cold that came before violence. The kind that said someone had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "I know." He kept his voice low, but the edge in it could have cut steel. "Got some phone calls on the way here. Seems your boy's mama sent a very interesting diary to the FBI yesterday. Whole county's about to come apart." He looked over at Wade Sullivan, who stood surrounded by bikers with nowhere to run. And this piece of garbage is at the center of it all. A helicopter arrived, Channel 4 News, its spotlight turning pre-dawn darkness into artificial noon. Within minutes, 3 more news choppers joined it, with their cameras capturing everything. The broken homeless man, the terrified child, the army of bikers surrounding them, the men who'd been caught in the act of hunting an 8-year-old boy. Within 8 minutes, the hashtag Tucson Biker Stand would be trending nationwide. Within an hour, it would reach Congress. But first, a reckoning. The confrontation. Jake stood and walked toward Wade. The sea of bikers parted for him, silent, watching. 247 men who dropped everything and ridden through the night because Ghost had called. Because when a brother asked for help, you answered. Even a brother you'd cut loose 3 years ago. Even a brother you'd told never to call again. Wade tried to project confidence, tried to stand tall and act like this was still his show. Failed spectacularly. The sweat on his forehead caught the helicopter lights. The tremor in his hands betrayed the fear he was trying to hide. "This is none of your business," he said. "Private family matter." Jake cut him off before he could spin more lies. "We're just looking for an 8-year-old boy because he's with us now, under our protection." "You don't understand. He's my stepson." Wade's voice took on a pleading quality he probably hadn't used in years. He ran away. His mother's worried. Marcus forced himself to sit up. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through his broken ribs. His dislocated shoulder screamed. He ignored it all, pushed through the pain the way he'd pushed through grief for 3 years. The way he'd learned to endure when endurance was all you had left. "His mother is locked in your basement," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength, "because she found evidence of what your family's been doing for 20 years. Silence. The helicopter camera zoomed in, millions of people across 3 states watching this unfold live. No script, no filter, just raw truth bleeding out under Arizona sky. Your brother killed my wife and daughter. Marcus pushed himself to his feet, swayed, stayed standing. 5 years ago, drunk driving. He got community service because your daddy made phone calls. He gestured at the army surrounding them. And now here we are again. Different Sullivan, same playbook. Only this time you picked the wrong family to destroy. One of the news helicopters had a live banner running across its feed. The anchor's voice came over a loudspeaker, tinny and distant, but audible. We're coming to you live from Tucson, where an apparent standoff is occurring between local law enforcement and what appears to be several hundred motorcycle club members. We're trying to confirm details, but witnesses report a child may be involved. Wade's mask cracked. Rage flickered across his features, followed immediately by something he'd probably never felt before or in his entitled life. Fear. You don't know what you're dealing with, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. Jake stepped forward until he was inches from Wade's face. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Your brother killed the wife and daughter of a man who was my friend. Your family buried it with money and badges. And now you're hunting a little boy who knows where the bodies are hidden. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. Run if you want, but there's nowhere to go. That helicopter's been streaming live for 10 minutes. The whole state knows your face. Sirens, multiple vehicles approaching fast. But these weren't local police. The sound was different. The vehicles were different. Black SUVs with federal plates. Government issue. The kind that showed up when jurisdiction superseded local corruption. FBI. The arrest. Agent Morrison emerged from the lead vehicle. Badge already displayed. 40-something, trim suit. The kind of competence that came from years of putting bad people in cages. Wade Sullivan. Neil Sullivan. His voice carried the flat authority of someone reading rights to people who were already finished. You're under arrest. Federal warrants for kidnapping, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder. Wade's face went from pale to gray. There must be some mistake. My father will handle this. He always handles this. Your father is being arrested right now. Agent Morrison's voice held no sympathy. Along with your brother Brendan and 6 other individuals connected to your family's operations. This investigation has been active for 18 months. We were waiting for the right evidence. He glanced at Marcus, still standing despite everything. Tonight, we got it. Neil Sullivan tried to run, made it about 3 steps before a wall of bikers blocked his path. He turned. Another wall. Turned again. Surrounded. 247 men who'd spent the night riding to protect a ghost and a child. Men who weren't moving aside for anyone. Going somewhere? Jake asked pleasantly. Neil's hand went to his weapon. 20 hands went to 20 weapons in response. Pistols appearing from leather vests like magic tricks. The message was clear. Try it and see what happens. I wouldn't, Jake said. Really? Neil's weight hand dropped. His shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him all at once like someone had pulled a plug. This is wrongful arrest, he said. But his voice was the voice of a man who knew he was finished. My uncle will fix this. He always fixes this. Agent Morrison approached with handcuffs. Your uncle is currently face down on his own kitchen floor with federal agents reading him his rights. Your uncle isn't going to help anyone ever again. The arrest happened quickly after that. Efficient, professional. Wade Sullivan, cuffed, silent, staring at nothing. Neil Sullivan crying now, actually crying, mumbling about lawyers and mistakes and how this couldn't be happening. The 4 men who'd beaten Marcus, rounded up, identified, added to the growing list. And then, just when Marcus thought it was over, another vehicle arrived. A sedan, unmarked, moving fast. It screeched to a halt at the edge of the chaos. The door flew open and Roy Sullivan stepped out. Deputy Sheriff for 22 years. Patriarch of the Sullivan Empire. The man who'd made phone calls to keep his son out of prison after killing 2 people. The man who'd spent 2 decades using his badge to bury complaints and make problems disappear. He was still in his bathrobe, clearly dragged from bed by news of the arrests, hair disheveled, face flushed, moving with the aggressive purpose of a man who was used to being in charge and couldn't process that the world had shifted without his permission. What the hell's going on here? He demanded, pushing through the crowd. Wade, Neil, what is this? He stopped when he saw the FBI agents. Stopped again when he saw the news helicopters. Stopped a 3rd time when he saw Marcus Collins standing in the middle of it all, broken but unbowed, surrounded by an army of leather and chrome. Recognition dawned slowly, like watching a computer process information it didn't want to accept. You, Roy's voice was barely audible. The husband, from the trial. The widower, Marcus corrected, from the trial where your son walked free after killing my family. Roy's face contorted. That was an accident. Brendan paid his debt to society. Brendan got 18 months of community service for 2 lives. Marcus's voice cut like a blade. And then your family went right back to what it always does, hurting people, burying the ones who talk, using badges to cover it all up. He took a step forward. The crowd parted, 247 men creating a path for a broken ghost to confront the man who'd helped destroy his world. How many, Roy, how many people have your sons hurt over the years? How many complaints have you buried? How many bodies are on that property of yours? Roy's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Ben Carter. Marcus kept going, relentless now. Remember him? Ethan's uncle, the one who started dating one of Wade's friends and then just disappeared. No forwarding address, no phone calls, nothing. No response. Or Maria Gonzalez filed 3 complaints against Brendan before she moved to California without telling anyone where she was going. Or Jennifer Walsh, or Susan Peters, or any of the other 51 people who tried to report your family and then either vanished or went silent. Marcus was close now, close enough to see the sweat on Roy's forehead, the tremor in his hands, the fear in his eyes. The FBI has your son's stepson. They have his mother. They have a diary detailing 15 years of crimes. He checked the horizon where dawn was breaking, pink and orange light bleeding across the desert sky. And in about 6 hours, they're going to start digging on your property. What do you think they're going to find, Roy? For the first time in 22 years, Roy Sullivan looked afraid. The testimony. Wait. The voice was small, but it cut through everything. The engines, the helicopters, the murmur of 200 men, the early morning traffic starting to build on roads around them. Ethan stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. Bikers, agents, journalists, and helicopters. Police arriving on scene. Everyone stopped. Everyone watched. Because there was something about the way this 8-year-old boy moved. Something about the set of his shoulders. The look in his eyes. The deliberate way he walked toward Roy Sullivan. He wasn't running anymore. Wasn't hiding. Wasn't the terrified child from the dumpster. He was standing. Roy stared at him like he was seeing a ghost. Recognition flickering. Memory trying to place this dirty face in context. You came to our house once, Ethan said, stopping directly in front of Roy. Last year, after Mama called 911 because Wade hit her. Roy said nothing. The cameras captured everything. Every expression, every moment of silence that spoke louder than words. You talked to Wade in the kitchen. You laughed with him. Ethan's voice was steady. Then you came out and told Mama to stop making trouble. You said little boys shouldn't tell stories about important families. The helicopter feed was going out to millions now. Morning news shows picking up the stream. Social media exploding. This moment being recorded and shared and witnessed by people across the country who were just starting their day. Having coffee, getting ready for work, watching an 8-year-old boy destroy a corrupt dynasty live on television. I wasn't telling stories. Ethan's eyes met Roy's directly. I saw what Wade did to Mama. I found Uncle Ben's diary. I know where he is. I know where they all are. Roy's face had gone completely white. You said I was lying, Ethan continued. When Mama begged for help, you told her I was making up stories. You protected Wade. You protected all of them. He took one final step forward. But I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth. And now, he swept his arm around at the chaos surrounding them. The bikers, the agents, the helicopters, the cameras broadcasting to 3 states and counting. Now everyone knows, everyone sees, you can't make this disappear. You can't make me disappear. His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. My mama is alive because she was brave. I'm alive because a stranger decided to help me. Uncle Ben is dead because of you. Tears streamed down his face, but his words were clear as bells. You're going to prison. Your sons are going to prison. And every single person watching this right now knows exactly what kind of monster you are. He turned his back on Roy, walked to Marcus, took his hand. I'm done. I said what I needed to say. Marcus squeezed the small hand in his. You did good, kid. You did so good. Behind them, Roy Sullivan collapsed to his knees. The FBI agents handcuffed him where he fell, and the cameras captured all of it. The patriarch of a corrupt dynasty broken by the testimony of an 8-year-old boy he dismissed as a liar. The rescue. Agent Morrison approached Marcus and Ethan. We found her. Ethan's head snapped up. Mama? Sarah Carter. She's alive. Morrison knelt to the boy's level. She was being held in a storage unit on the Sullivan property. She's hurt. They roughed her up. But she's conscious and asking for you. Ethan's legs gave out. Jake caught on him before he hit the ground. Relief hit the boy like a physical force. All the terror and running and hiding and watching Marcus get beaten. All of it catching up at once now that he knew his mother was alive. He burst into tears, not quiet crying, full body sobs that shook his small frame. She's on her way to the hospital, Morrison continued. Same hospital Marcus is going to. We'll take you there as soon as the paramedics clear it. What about Wade and his dad and Neil? Ethan asked through tears. We're processing them now. Federal warrants, kidnapping, conspiracy, assault, obstruction. Morrison paused. And that's just the beginning. Your mother's evidence details crimes going back 15 years. The people who disappeared. We're investigating. Ground-penetrating radar on the Sullivan property starts this afternoon. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Ethan understood. The people hadn't just disappeared. They'd been silenced. Permanently. And Uncle Ben, cheerful Uncle Ben who used to teach him card tricks and let him stay up late watching movies, was probably among them. Ethan cried harder. I know this is overwhelming, Agent Morrison said quietly, but I want you to know something. Because of you, because of your mother, because of that man who protected you, this family is finally facing justice. He glanced at Marcus, who was still standing through sheer willpower alone. 20 years of crimes, 51 complaints buried, 7 people who vanished without a trace. We've been trying to build a case for years. Every witness was too scared. Every document buried or destroyed. Your mother was the first person brave enough to fight back, and you were brave enough to survive. His voice held genuine respect. That changes everything. Being scared and doing the right thing anyway, Morrison said. That's what bravery is. Marcus's legs finally gave out. He'd been running on adrenaline and desperation for the last hour. Both were depleted now. His vision tunneled. The world tilted. He felt himself falling. Jake caught him before he hit concrete. Medic, Jake's voice cut through the chaos. We need a medic now. Paramedics swarmed within seconds. They'd been staged nearby, waiting. Now they moved with practiced efficiency. Multiple broken ribs, probable internal bleeding, dislocated shoulder. One of them spoke into a radio. He needs a hospital now. They loaded Marcus onto a stretcher. Every movement was agony, his ribs grinding, his shoulder screaming. But through it all, through the pain and the fading consciousness, he saw Ethan standing there, safe, surrounded by federal agents, protected by an army of brothers who'd ridden through the night because Ghost had called. Marcus's eyes flickered open as they lifted the stretcher. He saw Ethan, tried to speak. His lips moved. Ethan couldn't hear over the noise. The helicopters, the engines, the organized chaos of a major arrest operation. But he could read lips. You stood. Then the ambulance doors closed, and Marcus was gone. The vigil. The news coverage was relentless. Every channel, every network. Social media exploding with videos and commentary and hot takes. Arizona deputy sheriff's family accused of decades of abuse. Bodies found on Sullivan property. 4 women who'd filed complaints. Brave mother and son exposed corrupt dynasty. And the other story, the one that captured hearts. Homeless hero. The man who stood until he couldn't stand anymore. Marcus became famous without knowing it. He was still in surgery when the first interviews aired. Still unconscious when the Hells Angels began arriving at the hospital. Not just the 247 who'd ridden to Tucson that night. More. From Texas and California and New Mexico and Nevada. Word spreading through the Brotherhood. Ghost had stood for a kid who wasn't his. Had taken a beating that should have killed him. Had called for help when he needed it most. And Jake had answered. The vigil lasted 3 days. Bikers filled the parking lot. Spilled into the streets. Set up camps in nearby parks. Local businesses responded. A barbecue restaurant set up free meals for anyone wearing leather. A coffee shop donated 500 gallons of coffee. Hotels offered discounted rooms. Hospital staff called it the most peaceful gathering we'd ever seen. No fights, no disturbances, just vigil, just waiting, just brothers standing watch over one of their own. On the 3rd day, Marcus woke up. His eyes opened to fluorescent lights and sterile smell and pain. So much pain. Every breath hurt. Moving hurt. Existing hurt. But he was alive. And Ethan was sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. You stood, the boy said. Marcus tried to smile. It hurt. It hurt. You too. Confused look. You stood too, even when it hurt, even when you didn't think anyone would come. You stood. A woman appeared in the doorway. Mid-30s, bruised face, arm in a sling, but alive. Eyes that looked like Ethan's. The same determination. The same strength. Mr. Rivera. Sarah Carter's voice was thick with emotion. I'm Ethan's mother. She walked to the bed. I don't have words for what you did. You saved my son. You saved me. You exposed monsters who've been hiding for 20 years. Her voice broke. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. Marcus tried to speak. Couldn't. Too emotional. 3 years of being dead inside. 3 years of not feeling anything except grief and guilt. And now this overwhelming flood of something that might have been purpose, might have been redemption, might have been the first step back toward being human again. A hand on his shoulder, Jake standing beside the bed. The club took a vote. Unanimous. We want you back, if you'll have us. Marcus stared at him. After everything I did. After everything you said. Jake cut him off. After everything you did. You never stopped being our brother. We stopped being yours. That ends today. He held out a leather vest, not just any vest, a Hell's Angels vest with all the proper patches. But above the logo, something new. A custom patch that had never existed before. Guardian. We made it just for you, Jake said. Only one like it in the world. Marcus couldn't speak. Couldn't process. 3 days ago, he'd been writing a suicide note. Now he had a family again. Had a reason. Had brothers who'd ridden through hell because he called. Through the hospital window, he could see the parking lot. Hundreds of motorcycles. More arriving every hour. An army of leather and chrome standing vigil for a ghost who'd learned to be alive again. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. They all came for you, Ethan said quietly. Because you stood for me. The arrest continued through the morning. Brendan Sullivan picked up at his apartment. 3 more associates rounded up. By noon, 11 members of the Sullivan family and their inner circle were in federal custody. By evening, the ground-penetrating radar had found what everyone feared it would find. 4 bodies, 4 women who'd filed complaints and then moved away, who tried to escape and been silenced instead. Ben Carter was among them. The trial would come later. 3 weeks of testimony. 34 women finding their voices. 11 deputies admitting to cover-ups. Financial records showing $2 million in hush money. Wade Sullivan, life without parole. Neil Sullivan, 35 years. Roy Sullivan, consecutive life sentences, 72 years old. He would die in prison. Brendan Sullivan's case reopened with new evidence. New sentence, 12 years. It wasn't enough, would never be enough, but it was something. And 6 months later, Congress would pass the Ethan Maya Act. Federal law requiring independent review of domestic violence complaints. Mandatory reporting. Protection for witnesses. In the first year alone, 23 people would be removed from dangerous situations because of that law. 23 families that didn't shatter. 23 stories that didn't end in tragedy. But that was still to come. For now, in a hospital room in Tucson, a broken man held the hand of a boy he'd found in a dumpster. Surrounded by brothers who'd ridden through the night, watched over by a mother who'd been brave enough to fight back. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Rivera felt something he'd thought was gone forever. Hope. Marcus spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The ribs healed slowly, knitting back together with pins and patience. The shoulder required surgery. 3 hours under anesthesia, while doctors rebuilt what Wade Sullivan had torn apart. Physical therapy started on day 5. Small movements, lifting a cup, holding a fork, relearning what his body could do. Ethan visited every day, sometimes with Sarah, sometimes alone. He'd sit beside the bed and talk about small things, what he had for breakfast. The books the hospital volunteers brought him. The bikers in the parking lot who'd given him a leather vest of his own, child-sized, with a patch that said Guardian in Training. Jake came too, brought updates on the case, the bodies they'd found, the evidence mounting, the Sullivan empire crumbling piece by piece as federal investigators pulled threads and watched the whole thing unravel. On day 16, Marcus walked out of the hospital on his own feet, slow, leaning on a cane, but walking. The parking lot vigil had grown to over 1,100 motorcycles, brothers from 37 states who'd made the pilgrimage to see Ghost, to witness the man who'd stood until he couldn't stand anymore and somehow survived. They formed 2 lines from the hospital doors to where Jake's bike waited, an honor guard of leather and chrome. As Marcus walked between them, engines roared to life, not aggressive, reverent. A mechanical salute that shook windows and sent birds scattering from nearby trees. Jake handed him a helmet. You ride with me today, brother. Marcus climbed on behind him. His ribs protested. His shoulder ached. He didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, he was going somewhere that mattered. Had people waiting who cared whether he showed up. The ride back to the clubhouse took 20 minutes. 1,100 motorcycles moving in formation through Tucson. Traffic stopped. People stood on sidewalks taking videos. The spectacle of it. The power. The visible proof that brotherhood still meant something in a world that tried to tell you it didn't. At the clubhouse, they held a ceremony. Short, simple. Jake stood in front of the gathered brothers and spoke words Marcus thought he'd never hear again. Marcus Rivera, Ghost, You left us 3 years ago. We let you go. That was our failure, not yours. Today we ask you to come back, not as the man you were, as the man you've become." He held out the vest, the guardian patch gleaming in afternoon sun. "Welcome home, brother." Marcus took it, slipped his arms through. The leather settled on his shoulders like it had never left. The weight of it, the meaning, the visible symbol that he belonged somewhere again. The clubhouse erupted, voices raised in celebration, engines revving, brothers pounding on tables. Jake pulled Marcus into a hug that made his ribs scream. He didn't care about that either. Sarah and Ethan were there too, standing off to the side, watching. When the ceremony ended, Ethan ran to Marcus, threw his arms around him carefully, mindful of the healing injuries. "You're really back," the boy said. "I'm really back. Does this mean you're not living under the bridge anymore?" Jake answered before Marcus could. "It means he's family again, and family doesn't sleep rough." They set Marcus up in a small apartment, nothing fancy. One bedroom above a garage 2 blocks from the clubhouse. But it had running water and electricity and a door that locked. Had a bed instead of a sleeping bag on concrete. Had a refrigerator that hummed through the night. The first time Marcus slept there, he woke up at 3 a.m. in a panic. The ceiling above him felt wrong. Too close. Too permanent. He almost walked back to the overpass. Almost returned to the familiar concrete and the sound of traffic overhead. But then he remembered Ethan's face, the bracelet on the boy's wrist, the promise he'd made. "I stand until I stand." He was still standing. That meant something. 2029. 5 years since that night in the alley. Marcus stood in the parking lot of Tucson Convention Center, looking at his reflection in a motorcycle's chrome. He was 55 now, gray in his beard, lines deeper around his eyes. The cane a permanent fixture. His shoulders still ached when rain approached. His ribs made themselves known on cold mornings. But he was standing. The convention center was packed, not because Ethan's graduating class was particularly large, because word had spread that Marcus Ghost Rivera was giving the keynote speech. The homeless hero, the man who'd become a legend, the guardian angel of Tucson. They came from everywhere. Bikers filled half the parking lot. Over 1,000 motorcycles gleaming in afternoon sun. But also families, students, teachers, survivors of domestic violence who'd been helped by the Ethan Maya Foundation. People whose lives had been touched by the ripple effects of one night 5 years ago. Inside, Marcus waited backstage. His hands shook, not from injury or age, from nerves. He'd faced down Wade Sullivan without flinching, had stood against 4 men beating him within an inch of his life. But the thought of speaking to this crowd made his stomach twist. Ethan found him there, 13 now, taller, stronger. The haunted look in his eyes replaced by something calmer. Still serious, still thoughtful, but no longer the terrified prey animal hiding in a dumpster. "You nervous?" the boy asked. "Terrified. You'll be fine." Ethan grinned. "Just tell them what you told me, about standing, about choosing to be there when it matters. What if I mess it up?" "Then you mess it up," Ethan shrugged with the careless confidence of youth. "They're not here because you're a good speaker. They're here because of what you did. That matters more than words." Marcus pulled the boy into a hug. "When did you get so wise?" "Had a good teacher." The introduction was longer than Marcus wanted. The principal talked about his story, about the night under the overpass, about the trial and the convictions and the legislation that followed, about the lives saved because one man chose to stand when he had every reason to fall. Then Marcus walked onto the stage. The applause was deafening. 1,000 people on their feet. He saw Jake in the front row, gray beard split by a massive grin. Saw Sarah beside him, tears already streaming down her face. Saw Ethan in his cap and gown, sitting with the other graduates, looking at Marcus like he hung the moon. The applause continued for 2 full minutes. Marcus stood at the podium, overwhelmed, waiting for it to die down. It didn't. Finally, he raised his hand and the crowd quieted. "I'm not good at speeches." His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat, tried again. "But Ethan asked, and I've learned that when Ethan asks, you say yes." Laughter rippled through the audience. Some of the tension left Marcus's shoulders. 5 years ago, I was ready to die. I won't go into details. This is a graduation, not therapy. But I want you to understand something. I had given up on myself, on the world, on the idea that anything I did could ever matter. He paused, let the silence stretch. Then I found a little boy hiding in a dumpster. Complete silence now. Every eye on him. He was scared, alone, running from people who wanted to kill him. And I had a choice. Walk away. Let someone else deal with it. Stand. His eyes found Ethan in the crowd. I chose to stand. Not because I was brave, because I looked at that little boy and saw my daughter. Saw what I couldn't save, and I physically could not walk away. He gripped the podium, the wood solid under his hands. Real. Present. Anchoring him. What happened that night? You've heard the stories. What you haven't heard is what happened inside me. Protecting Ethan, I found something I thought was gone forever. Purpose, meaning, a reason to keep breathing. His voice cracked. My daughter Maya was 7 when she died. She never got to graduate anything. Never got to grow up, never got to have the future you all have in front of you right now. He looked at the graduates. Young faces. Whole lives ahead of them. You have that chance. Every single one of you. Don't waste it. Find something worth standing for. Doesn't have to be dramatic. Doesn't have to make the news. Small acts of courage add up. They change the world. He stepped back from the podium. The applause started again, but he raised his hand. I'm not done. Silence. Ethan Carter changed my world. He gave me a reason to live when I had none. Over these 5 years, he's become my son in every way that matters except biology. Watching him grow has been the greatest honor of my life. He looked directly at Ethan now. You stood that night. You stood when you were terrified, when you had every reason to give up. You trusted a stranger. You survived. And because you survived, because you were brave enough to speak the truth, an entire system of corruption came down. His voice grew stronger. That's the power one person has. One choice. One moment of courage. You think you're small and the world is big and nothing you do matters. But I'm standing here telling you that's a lie. You matter. Your choices matter. The question is what you'll do with that power. He paused. Find your thing. Find what makes you willing to stand when it would be easier to walk away. Then protect it. Fight for it. Stand for it until you can't stand anymore. He smiled. Because that's when you find out who you really are. The applause that followed wasn't just loud. It was thunderous. 1,000 people on their feet. Some crying, some cheering. The bikers in the back revving engines in approval. The sound rolling through the convention center like a physical force. Marcus walked off stage. His legs shook. Adrenaline draining. But he'd done it. Said what needed saying. Honored Maya's memory and Ethan's courage in the same breath. Backstage, Sarah waited. She threw her arms around him. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. For then, for now. For all of it. He's a good kid. You raised him right. We raised him right, she corrected. You've been as much his father as anyone these last 5 years. Jake appeared with a flask. For medicinal purposes, he said with a wink. Marcus took a drink. The whiskey burned going down, settled warm in his stomach. 5 years ago, he'd have kept drinking until the bottle was empty, until oblivion swallowed him. Now he took one drink and handed it back. I'm good. Yeah, Jake said quietly. You are. The ceremony ended around 4 p.m. Graduates flooded out into afternoon sun, throwing caps and hugging families and taking pictures. Marcus stood off to the side, leaning on his cane, watching the celebration. Ethan found him there, still in his cap and gown, diploma in hand. Good speech, the boy said. You think so? Best one I've ever heard, he grinned. What happens now? Marcus looked around at the crowd, the bikers packing up, the families heading to dinner. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Now we go home. Your mom's making dinner. And after that, you become a lawyer. Put bad guys in prison. Change the world. Ethan laughed. One step at a time, old man. That's the only way to do it. They started walking toward Marcus's truck, a gift from the club 2 years ago. Black Ford F-150 with a license plate that read Guardian, parked next to Jake's Harley. Wait, Ethan stopped. I have something. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the silver bracelet with the compass charm, the one he'd been wearing that night in the dumpster, the one Marcus had noticed and remembered and wondered about. Mom said I could give this to you. She said you earned it. Marcus stared at it. I can't take that. It belongs to your family. You are family. Ethan's voice was firm. That's what Mom said. When someone stands for you when they have nothing, that makes them family forever. He reached up. Marcus bent down. Ethan fastened the bracelet around Marcus's neck. It hung there like a medal, silver gleaming against his shirt, the compass charm catching the light. I stand until I stand. Ethan's eyes were wet. That's what you taught me. That's what I'm going to teach everyone else. Marcus pulled him into a hug. In his pocket was the photograph of Maya, carried it every day for 5 years. through recovery and rebuilding and learning to be human again. Sometimes he still took it out and looked at her face. The gap-toothed smile, the pure joy of being 7. He pulled it out now, looked at it while holding Ethan. 2 children, one gone, one saved, both loved, both remembered. I couldn't save you, he whispered to the photo. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. He pressed it to his heart, but I saved him. I hope that means something. Jake's hand landed on his shoulder. It means everything, brother. It means everything. Sarah joined them, made it a group hug. 4 people standing in a parking lot while around them the celebration continued. A strange family, forged in trauma, held together by choice and courage and the simple decision to show up for each other. After a moment, they broke apart, headed to the truck. Marcus drove them to Sarah's house, the one she'd bought with money from the foundation. 3 bedrooms, a yard, a place where Ethan could grow up safe. She made dinner like she'd promised, chicken and rice and vegetables. They ate at the table together, talked about the ceremony, about Ethan's college plans, about the pre-law program at University of Arizona, about the scholarship from the Ethan Maya Foundation. Full ride, Ethan said, 4 years. They're covering everything. Marcus still couldn't quite believe the foundation existed, that people had donated money in memory of a daughter he'd lost and a boy he'd found. That good could come from so much pain. After dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset over Tucson, the sky turning orange and pink and purple, the desert cooling down as evening arrived. You did good today, Sarah said quietly. Maya would be proud. Marcus didn't trust himself to speak, just nodded. We're all proud, Jake added, the whole club. What you did that night, what you've done since, living when it would be easier to die. That takes guts. Ethan leaned against Marcus's shoulder. I'm glad you lived. Me too, kid. Marcus put his arm around him. Me too. July 2030. 6 years since the night in the alley. Marcus stood in the same alley behind Miguel's cantina. They'd torn down the dumpster 2 years ago, replaced it with a proper waste management system. But the spot remained. A small marker sat against the brick wall where the dumpster used to be. Bronze plaque on a granite base. Simple words that said everything. Here, a ghost learned to live again. Marcus knelt beside it, placed fresh flowers. Did this every year on the anniversary, not to mourn, to remember, to honor the moment when his life split in 2 before and after, when he chose to stand instead of fall. Ethan appeared behind him. 14 now, growing fast, voice starting to change. He placed his own flowers beside Marcus's. You okay? The boy asked. Yeah, just thinking. About Maya, about all of it. Maya, Sarah, you, that night. How close I came to never being here. Ethan sat beside him on the pavement. I'm glad you stayed. Me too, kid. They sat in comfortable silence. The alley smelled like it always had, grease and cilantro, but different too, cleaner. The restaurant had renovated, upgraded their systems. The city had installed better lighting. Even this forgotten corner had changed. I got accepted, Ethan said suddenly. To what? Pre-law program, University of Arizona. Full scholarship. The Ethan Maya Foundation. Marcus turned to him. The what? The scholarship fund. They named it after me and Maya, for kids who've survived domestic violence and want to study law or advocacy. Ethan's eyes were bright. They're funding 50 students this year. Marcus couldn't speak, his throat tight, eyes burning. Mom helped set it up. So did Agent Morrison. So did Jake. Ethan continued. They want you on the board too, if you want. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know about standing up when no one else will. That's all they need. A sound behind them. Marcus turned. Not just Ethan. Sarah standing there. Jake and 20 other bikers. Agent Morrison in a suit. Linda, the victim's advocate from the hospital. All gathering at the memorial. All part of the story that started here 6 years ago. You know what they're calling you now? Jake asked. What? The guardian angel of Tucson. There's a mural downtown. You, Ethan, the 247 bikes. Artists said it's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm not extraordinary, Marcus started to protest. Ethan cut him off. Just someone who stood when it mattered. That's pretty extraordinary. They walked together to see it. 6 blocks to a building Marcus passed regularly but had never really looked at. Now he stopped and stared. The mural covered the entire side of a 3-story building. Vibrant colors, photorealistic detail. Marcus standing in front of a dumpster, hand extended, Ethan taking it. And behind them, stretching into the distance, 247 motorcycles, headlights blazing, chrome gleaming. At the bottom in letters 3 feet tall, I stand until I stand. People had left things at the base of the mural. Flowers, candles, notes. Marcus approached slowly, reading some of them. Thank you for showing us courage still exists. My daughter survived because of the Ethan Maya Act. You gave me hope when I had none. His hands shook. He reached out and touched the painted version of himself. The artist had captured something in the eyes. Not the broken ghost from 6 years ago. Not the man writing a suicide letter. Something else. Something harder to define. The look of someone who'd found a reason. It's beautiful, Sarah said softly beside him. It's too much. Marcus couldn't look away from it. I'm just one person. I just made one choice, Jake laughed. Brother, that's the point. One person, one choice, changed everything. The foundation has helped 247 survivors so far, Agent Morrison added. Named after the number of bikers who showed up that night. 247 scholarships, 247 second chances. All because you chose to stand. Marcus turned to Ethan. The boy was crying. Happy tears, proud tears. You did this, Ethan said. You saved me. And because you saved me, we could save others. That's how it works. One person standing makes it easier for the next person to stand, then the next, then the next, until an army stands together. Marcus pulled him close, looked at the mural, at the people gathered, at the memorial 6 blocks away, at the life he'd built from the ruins of the one he'd lost. I couldn't save Maya. The words came out soft, but maybe I honored her memory. Maybe I turned grief into something good. You did, Sarah said firmly. You absolutely did. They stayed until sunset, watching the light change on the mural, watching people stop and read and take photos, watching the story spread. Eventually they headed home, back to Sarah's house. But first, one more stop. The cemetery sat on the north side of town, green grass impossible in Arizona heat, maintained by constant watering, trees providing shade, quiet except for birdsong and the distant hum of traffic. Maya's grave was under an oak tree. Sarah had picked the spot 6 years ago. Said their daughter would like the shade. Marcus knelt beside it. The headstone was simple. Maya Rivera, beloved daughter, and below that, added 3 years ago, your daddy saved a boy named Ethan. He stood until he stood. Now we all stand with him. Love the 247. He placed flowers, touched the stone. I'm doing okay, mija. Better than okay. I found a family again. Found a reason. I wish you were here to meet Ethan. You'd like him. He's brave like you were, smart, kind. His voice broke. I miss you every day, but I'm not drowning in it anymore. I'm standing. I'm living. I hope that's okay. Ethan appeared beside him, placed his own flowers. He'd never met Maya, but he visited her grave regularly, talked to her sometimes, told her about school and friends and the life he was building. Thank you, Ethan said to the stone, for having a dad who stood up for me. I'll take care of him. I promise. Sarah and Jake hung back, giving them space. This moment between a man and the daughter he'd lost and the boy he'd found. After a while, they stood, walked back to the others, got in the truck, and drove home through Tucson sunset. The city Marcus had almost left 6 years ago, the place where he'd planned to die and ended up learning to live instead. That night, lying in bed in the apartment above the garage, Marcus thought about the journey, from concrete under a bridge to a real bed, from writing a suicide letter to giving a speech to 1,000 people, from ghost to guardian, from broken to whole, from alone to surrounded by family. He thought about the phone call with 4% battery, about Jake answering when he had every right to hang up, about 247 brothers riding through the night, about Ethan's trust and Sarah's strength, and the simple fact that choosing to stand had changed everything. The bracelet hung around his neck, the compass charm cool against his skin, pointing him toward a future he'd never imagined possible. His phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. Love you. Thanks for standing. Marcus typed back with fingers that no longer shook. Love you too, kid. Thanks for giving me a reason to. He put the phone down, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 6 years, Marcus Rivera fell asleep without seeing the crash, without hearing Maya's voice asking for daddy in the hospital, without the crushing weight of guilt and failure. Instead, he dreamed of the future, of Ethan graduating law school, of more survivors helped, of the foundation growing, of ordinary people making extraordinary choices, of standing when it mattered. And when he woke the next morning, the sun was shining through his window, birds singing outside, the smell of coffee from the clubhouse below, Jake's voice calling up the stairs asking if he wanted breakfast. Marcus smiled, got out of bed, put on his guardian vest, and stood. Because some stories don't end. They keep growing, keep touching lives long after the cameras turn off and the headlines fade. This was one of those stories. And it wasn't over yet, it was just beginning.